Russell.
Start that again. I have 5:30, so we'll start the study session for City Council of Cherry Hills Village. Today is Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. On the study session agenda is redistricting. And in response to the census of 2020. City Clerk Gillespie and Senior Manager Workman, you have a joint presentation for us?
Yes, we do. We're
Great.
teaming up on this one. So good evening, Mayor Stewart, members of City Council. According to the Home Rule Charter, following each federal decennial census, the city shall modify the council district boundaries as needed to ensure the districts are contiguous and compact wherever possible and shall have approximately the same number of voters. Based on court cases, we have defined this as 10%, that total deviations between the most populous district and the least populous district not be above 10%. That's our goal. Based on the 2020 census, we have calculated that the difference is 18%. Therefore, redistricting is required at this time. And that is accomplished by ordinance by amending section 2-1-20 of the municipal code. Just for a little history, our previous redistricting was done in 2012, following the 2010 census. At that time, the difference between the most and least populated districts was 39%, so quite a bit more than right now. And the 2012 redistricting resulted in changes in boundaries of nearly every council district, as opposed to our current situation, which you'll see in just a moment, and I'll throw it over to Paul here.
Great, thanks, Laura. You all get 2 for the price of 1 tonight.
There we go.
Okay. So before you start squinting and realizing you can't read any of that, this map is just for illustrative purposes. No need to necessarily be able to read every little tract and block in there. The U.S. Census provides information at the state level, the county level, the tract level, and the block level. Cherry Hills Village is comprised of 2 tracts. Those are highlighted in yellow, and those are 67.04 and 67.05. And 114 blocks. Those are all the little green highlights you see there. And the boundaries of those blocks are the more faint red lines within those blocks. The block level is the smallest geographic area that the census provides information for. And to Laura's credit, she was able to find on the U.S. Census website a couple of layers that have information related to the population of each census block and the number of housing units in each census block. With that information, staff provided at the block level, staff was able to assign each block's population and housing units by council district. Adding together each block's population within a council district is how the current district populations were determined. You may notice that there are some census blocks that overlap council districts. In that occasion, we would take the total population in the block divided by the housing units, and that would give us the people per household for that individual census block. Then staff would go through and count each lot in the different council districts to determine the number of housing units in that census block. And mathematically what we would do, and the example for this is block 3013 is the one that's highlighted in yellow there. It splits district 3 and 5. According to the census, there's 135 people and 56 housing units in that block. So what we would do is do 135 people divided by the 56 housing units. That gives us 2.41 people per household in that census block. And we would go through and count each housing unit in District 3 and District 5. So for example, in District 3, there's 27 housing units. We would take those 27 housing units times the 2.41 people in that census block, and that would give us 65.07, or 65 people were assigned to District 3 from that census block. We just do the reverse for District 5. We're going to present three options for council this evening. They're certainly not the only three options, but they are three options that only involve two of the council districts. The main criteria, as Laura mentioned, is population equity between the districts, keeping neighborhoods intact, keeping districts contiguous and compact, and keeping council members in their current district. The first option would shift the boundary between Districts 3 and District 5 to the east from the current Dahlia alignment to the Forest Street alignment. Now, Forest Street does not exist. It's just a geographical reference of where that line would be moved to. In that scenario, the least populous district would be District 2, the most populous would be District 3, and the difference between the two would be 8%. The second option would shift the boundary between Districts 3 and District 5 to the east from the current Dahlia Street alignment to the Holly Street alignment. In this scenario, District 2 would still be the least populous, and District 3 would be the most populous. The difference between the most and least in this scenario would be 9.8%. And the third option would be to shift the boundary between Districts 3 and District 6 so that all of Census Block 4002 would be in District 3. In this scenario, District 2 would be the least populous district, and District 5 would be the most. And again, the difference between the two would be 9.8%. That's kind of the methodology and how we got to the populations and what the options, at least some of the options, may be. And that's where I will turn it back over to Laura.
So due to Councillor Blum's planned absence from tonight's meeting, we had a staff meeting with Councillor Blum and Councillor Sheldon to review what you all were just presented with. And I can also throw this to Dan to speak to it, but they communicated to staff that option 2 is their preferred option and that they wanted to keep the process simple. So we just wanted to let you all know that Al has seen all this and kind of expressed his opinion. So next steps, a couple of options. Council can direct staff to bring back one of the presented options that you've seen tonight as a council bill on first reading to change the district boundaries. Or council can direct staff to bring more options beyond what you've seen tonight for redistricting to a future study session for further discussion. Just a warning that if we start moving other boundaries, that will trigger those numbers to shift, and we'll probably end up changing more than just 2 district boundaries if we start messing with all the edges of all the different districts. In addition to changing the districts, staff is also seeking council's direction on changing how we describe the districts in the code. Currently, we have big, long paragraphs describing in words all the boundaries of the district, and we like to propose changing that to just referencing a map that we would keep on file. We do keep maps on the city website too of the council districts for ease of use, but just for simplification purposes, we are proposing that and are seeking council's direction. So we are prepared for any questions.
Councilor Sheldon.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, and thank you for your time last week going over this with Al and I. As you heard from Laura, in our discussions with Al and I, we were both 100% in lockstep with each other on option 2, which is the realignment to Holly. I did ask one question, and I just want you guys to hear this because I learned a little bit more. I learned everything I know about census data and counting last week. Everything I know now is just learned recently. But I did ask the question about what happens down the road if something else gets subdivided. Thinking it through, if we ended up with a neighborhood with 100 new homes in it, pick a piece of property, which is very unlikely in our village. But the simple answer, and it's the right answer, is you can't look forward. This is a look backward. Correct. This is a look at what it was at a snapshot in time in 2020. This is 2020 census data. And so we can't look forward and say, well, what would happen if Kent, Denver, for instance, ended up having hundreds of houses put on it? Then District 3 would end up with a big, giant balloon of residents. And so anyway, I think, one of you guys tell me what was the key to the 10% variance? We have to stay below the 10% threshold? What's the purpose of that 10 again?
That's a requirement of federal.
That's what courts have determined to try to be an equal one person, one vote situation with the districts. And
Okay. And so we sneak right under that with option 2. And I frankly think if we can get that option 2 to work with that line being cleanly aligned on Holly Street, I think option 2 is certainly what I'm in favor of. And then as to your second question about defining these as an exhibit as opposed to a narrative, absolutely define them as an exhibit, not a written out narrative as to the legal descriptions.
Councilor Gallagher.
Yeah, I would concur with Dan's position. And there's something about the simplicity of communication when you can draw really clean lines. You can say, district runs right down Holly Street, and to the east of Holly is District 5. So, in my case, I often have to use the words, it's the west side of Franklin Street is my district. So it's having that simplicity is great. That's all.
Councilor Brown.
So I could go either option 1 or option 2. For me, option 3 is, I think, should be discarded outright because it divides Covington right down the middle. And that is such a small neighborhood. The significance is not lost on me. Because we elect at large, it's not as though people don't have options of people they can go talk to. So that's not really what we're talking about here. What we're really talking about is the accessibility of service on city council, and kind of keeping that as fair as possible, because that's the only requirement, is that you have to actually live in the district. And I think, I hate to see things where neighborhoods are divided what seems somewhat arbitrarily. And that's been kind of my concern with some of our larger districts. I realize they have to be that large because for population reasons, but District 3 having Al live in Glenmore, but having people who live almost at the intersection of Colorado and Hamden, those are very different experiences of living in Cherry Hills Village. I have a tiny bit of an issue about dividing it on Holly and saying if you live on this side, you're in this district and that side. But again, because we're not the kind of city where you only go to your council person from your district. You really can approach anybody. We all serve at the pleasure of all of the citizens of Cherry Hills Village. It's not that large of a concern. But I'd like to see us try to keep people who have similar experiences and similar, therefore, concerns, grouped together so that people who are elected from those areas can represent those concerns and issues to the best of our ability. So I could do either 1 or 2. I think 1, what was the difference between the max and 8%? So I think that gets us a little bit closer. 9.8% is so close that if 10% is the threshold, I would think we're almost certainly going to be doing this again in 10 years. But even at 8%, we may be doing it again in 10 years too. So those are my thoughts.
Councilor Wheel.
Option 2 looks like the cleanest way to go, and I think, I agree with all the comments so far, but, so I don't want to be redundant. I'm
So, I look at this based on 2 criteria. One is logistically, what makes sense, what is easy. The second one is that the percent difference. And again, I go back to the question or the comment that was just mentioned around, at what point do we need to redistrict? Is that 9.8% difference? Is that 8%? Or do we need to look for alternative option to get this to 5% difference? I don't know that. I'm not sure if you guys will know it. So the question is, do we shoot for to come up with the lowest difference that we can possibly come. So I'm okay with option 1 or 2, but to be frank with you, I don't know how long this is going to last. And if I basically say, ask the staff to go and now look for option, the next option that brings a difference to only 6% or 7%, I don't even know how long that would last. So anyway, the answer is option 1 or 2 is fine, but we probably have to redistrict again. At a 9.8%, we have to, and the people that are going to be affected are basically at the periphery of all these districts that they're going to be shuffled around, right? So that's all.
I think just to respond to that, we're required to redistrict every 10 years. So that's what's going to happen. But even if they go above 9.8 within that time, it doesn't matter. You wait until the 10 years to do it again. We won't be in an intermediate. I guess my thoughts on this is really this isn't a one person, one vote thing because we have at large everywhere. So it's not a situation where one district has a lot of members and another district has a few members, and then the votes of the district with a few members would count more than the ones that everybody votes is the same. So it's not really a one person, one vote thing. It's just the only requirement is our charter that says it shall be contiguous and compact. I think this is contiguous and compact. And the only relevance of this is where you live to run for council or planning and zoning. That's it.
If I can also chime in, option, I think one of the other problems is, and Katie, you mentioned it, if we start messing around with the neighborhoods and cutting a neighborhood in half and taking a street that bifurcates a subdivision, it's like that, though, throughout here already. There's lots of examples of that in here already, and these options that were laid out in front of us were the simplest of them all. If we wanted to, we could probably figure out a way to get to a 5% deviation max on these. I'm sure we could. But you're going to see every single one of these districts are going to get redone by just 3 houses each or 10 houses each. I don't know that it makes any sense to have to talk to one of your neighbors and say, you're no longer in my district, you're now over in Katie's, and for all of us to have to do that. If we can have it so that it impacts only 2 of these districts, I think there's an advantage to doing that.
So with that in mind, and again, I'm comfortable with option 2, and I appreciate the simplicity of just moving one line. But now, in this scenario, your least and most populous districts are contiguous. And it does seem like you could carve out 10 houses, either... what is that? I can't read it. This little loop. So that must be Quincy, just south of Quincy, Random Road. Mm-hmm. How many houses are on Random Road? Maybe if you took all of Random Road and put it in District 3, or something along those lines, right? You could. It seems like you could carve a few houses out of there.
You mean put it random into
Put it
2?
No, it's in random is into. Put it into 3 because. Oh, right, that's going the wrong way.
No, it's going the right.
Yes.
You want to find someplace in 3
Yes. So maybe it's this. That's Mansfield, and that part is always weird to me. But maybe that goes into District 2.
Did you look at that when you were looking at it and see what'd you encounter?
Well, again, with the simplicity and wanting to impact as few districts as possible, because the population difference, you'd have to add several of the census tracts, and you get into more of the dividing of neighborhoods. And admittedly, Councilor Brown, option 3 is not a preferred option of staff because of the exact reasons that you said. And that's why it wasn't presented, is because it really starts to divide neighborhoods in order to get the math to work.
But I think that it just boils down to, if the people that are in the block being moved want to run for council, which district would they be running in, or who would they be competing against? And given that, and that we don't have, any knowledge that anybody's really affected, I think I'd keep it simple and just move the line, meet the requirement, because again, we're councilors more or less at large, we're voted in at large, and if somebody knows one of the other counselors better than me, that's who they're going to call, regardless of where they live, or vice versa. So I'd say keep it simple,
Yeah, I agree. And that what I'm talking about, so if you look in District 3, where it's just south of Mansfield, the division between District 3 and District 6, that's Bel Air. Those 8 houses on the west side of Bel Air are part of our neighborhood. But because they're on the other side of Bel Air, they're in a different district. Same thing with the bottom along Oxford there. And again, splitting hairs, but as long as we're having the discussion, it isn't the biggest deal because it isn't a one person, one vote, overpopularized representation. But we are breaking up communities. I would rather see us not do that. That would probably involve a ton of work and moving a lot of lines. Maybe that's not necessary, but I wondered when I was looking at this, for example, why would you put the line along Holly and not along the backs of those lots just west of Holly? So that the houses on Holly are all in one district and the houses that you enter from whatever street what's on the other side of Fairfax, I don't know, those houses are all in one district. I know it makes it easier, particularly when you're talking about describing it in text in a document, to say it goes along Holly. But to me, it's always seemed to make more sense that you would draw the lines on the back of the property lines and not down the middle of the street.
So I will say, we did look at what I'll call a more methodical approach, if you will. It's my opinion that there's probably not a scenario where no neighborhood gets split up. That's just, the math just won't work. And are there opportunities at the edges for us to potentially have a cutout here or an insert there? Yes, absolutely. Again, our paradigm was, these are the existing boundaries. This is the existing expectation from the residents. How can we provide the least amount of impact to that? And that was kind of our paradigm as we go through it. Now, that said, if council desires for us to go through the exercise of creating more options, we certainly can do that. But there's probably not a scenario where every neighborhood is going to be in one district.
All right, any other comments, or do you have a sense for, I think I hear a sense for option 2, and is to go ahead with that and present it back to council? Good, I mean, obviously, this isn't a monumental issue, so sounds good. And I think we all agree, if you can refer to a map and not have that language in the code, that I've always looked at that and thought, wow, what a big effort for very little. And I'm sure that's not how most municipalities do it. Okay. That being said, I don't think you have anything else on the study session.
Nope, that's it. Thank you.
We can take a break for half an hour. We'll be back here at 6:30 for the regular session. 6:30. I call to order the regular meeting of the Cherry Hills Village City Council. Today is Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. Have a roll call, please.
Counselor Safavi?
Here.
Counselor Wheel?
Happy to be here.
Counselor Brown?
Here.
Counselor Gallagher?
Here.
Counselor Sheldon?
Here.
Counselor Blum is absent.
If we could all stand for the pledge, please. Okay, we have audience participation. Two signed up. First, Laura Chrisman, former mayor. You're up.
Okay, I have 5 minutes. You guys have all read my petition. So I think the best way is for you to ask questions, but you have 5 minutes. I'm keeping track. Ask questions. But you can. There's nothing that prevents you from asking questions. It is that I cannot ask you to answer a question. So let me tell you, there is a petition. It will require a vote of a majority of the citizens if the city elects to sell or transfer or otherwise, block the public use of trails, bridle trails, pedestrian trails, open space, and what was my last one? Parks, but you guys already have parks. Kind of. Okay, so I didn't do this by myself. I hired an attorney to help me on this. We filed that with Laura. Laura came back with a few changes, I understand, Trey told me. And he has made all of those, it is my understanding. Is that correct? The changes you had.
He hasn't gotten back to me on that yet.
Oh, okay. He told me he was. So before it is filed, it is my understanding all your requested changes will have been made. If not, I'll let you know. And that open space specifically includes Quincy Farm, and requires 250 something or 260 signatures.
Sorry, Laura, I
Sorry.
can't hear you. I'm trying real hard. I'm watching your
Okay, I'm
lips.
sorry.
It's just-
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Anyway, under Colorado law, the rules for amending a charter were changed and segregated from a general citizen election issue. So, yeah, there's a bunch of people. 90 days after filing to gather 5% of the, I think the word is active voters. The people who give us that number is Arapahoe County. So, and then you collect the signatures. I'm just telling you the process because, this is actually under a relatively new ordinance, or statute, excuse me. And then you submit them, and then I believe, Laura, you go through them. And then if she says, well, this one's wrong, or they didn't sign their name right, or they're actually from Los Angeles, whatever, then there's a certain amount of time, and I don't know exactly what that is, to get new signatures or to correct those signatures. Obviously, the Los Angeles example couldn't be corrected. And then it goes on the ballot. And there you go. Oh, I will say one thing. We were careful, and we went through a lot of machinations about 90 Mead Road. We know that the city acquired that, or I know, I'm going to assume that my knowledge is correct, in order for it to be a place where you did staging for the construction of the old city hall, which was intended to be done many years ago. Got the Taj Mahal nickname and went away. The neighbors, which was the Fredericksons, raised holy heck because they did not want that next door. That was R1, and the city backed off because they weren't building it anyway. And when we did this, we did not use that. As far as I know, that property has never been used by the public. Because of a close friend of mine here, he was very concerned because he feels very strongly about this property as being an asset of the city to be sold. And so we played with the language, and he used to say the use and benefit of the public. We changed that to be the use and enjoyment of members of the public. So it doesn't mean the city in its role as Public Works using 90 Mead Lane for trees is the use enjoyment of members of the public. It is also my understanding, and Jay, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, that you guys have always had those chains across the front. It has never been used by the public as we would define use and enjoyment of the public. So that's the change we made. Why did we not put excluding 90 Mead Lane? Because once you sell 90 Mead Lane, it's gone, and it's still in the charter. That's confusing. I don't think anybody wants to amend the charter again. But also, most people don't know about 90 Mead Lane. And, well, why? Well, maybe that should be public, and blah, blah, blah. So we changed it for that purpose. And there's no questions?
Nope, thank you. Thank you, Ms.
Okay.
Chrisman. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming. Mr. Holland. Or Earl.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, Earl Holland, 3 Vista Road. Dan, you can hear me better than Laura, right?
Yes.
As always.
Yes, sir, thank you.
I'm following up on Mayor Chrisman's comments. I support the intent of Mayor Chrisman's proposed charter amendment, as I suspect most villagers will, and that is to ensure the protection of the city's parks, trails, and open space. But that said, I do want to point out a concern that I have and that Laura mentioned already, and that is with regard to the amendment's possible impact on 90 Mead Lane. And as she said, a lot of thought and work was put into the language of the amendment to make sure that 90 Mead would not get caught up and treated like the city's parks and trails and open space if the charter amendment were to pass. But I'm still concerned that an argument could be made that it does apply and therefore require a vote to sell the property. Now, as I've always understood, and again, as Laura mentioned, 90 Mead was originally acquired way back in 2004 to be a staging area for the construction of a new city hall. Well, that city hall project proposed at that time was ultimately never approved and pursued, but the property remained in the city's possession, and over the ensuing years, multiple councils discussed what to do with the property. Now, to my knowledge, it was never seriously considered to make it part of Mead Park or to designate it as park property, but it was thought to be a good investment and considered to be a store of value. Now, as most of you know, property values in Cherry Hills have increased greatly over the last few years, probably, quite frankly, 30 to 50% in the last 3 years. It's possible that this may continue to increase at the same clip, but I suspect not. My guess is it will probably level off a bit after this. Now, there's been discussion recently about the financial condition of the city, and I've been before you and given my opinion about that subject. But as part of my comments, I've always assumed that 90 Mead was a store of value that the city could draw on if necessary. In fact, I've recommended, because of the fact that I think that we've had this large escalation and we're probably going to level off, that the city go ahead and sell 90 Mead and apply the $3 million plus that it would probably realize to its general fund balance. I still feel that way. And with the prospect of this charter amendment passing, I feel even more so. I don't think the city should take the chance that the language of the amendment, should it pass, might apply to 90 Mead and require a vote in order to sell it. As such, I encourage council to take up the matter of selling that property before the next election, thereby ensuring that the store of value that is 90 Mead Lane is available to the city for its financial reserves. To take the chance and to not have the ability to be able to maneuver that, in my mind, would be a serious misjudgment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That's all I had signed up. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Well, allow it. If not, we'll move on to reports from boards and commissions. Is there anybody here to speak to that? No. Next to consent agenda. I know that Councilor Sheldon wishes to remove item 6A.
I move to approve the consent agenda items 6B, C, D, and E.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
6A, pulled out because Councilor Sheldon was not present at that meeting. So
I move to approve the minutes from the April 5th, 2022 meeting.
Second.
And all voting except for Councilor Sheldon, who is not voting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Those items are approved. Next, we go on to unfinished business. The first item up is a public hearing on Council Bill 7, Series 2022, vacating the city's interest in a portion of the Crest Road right-of-way. This is our second and final reading, and it is a public hearing, and it's led by Director Goldie.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. The owners of 3 Crest Road, Jordan and Kimberly Lakeup, are requesting that the city vacate a portion of Crest Road that abuts their property. The Lakeups desire to make permanent improvements to the driveway and landscaping on their property. 3 Crest Road is the sole property that is accessed by this portion of the right-of-way and subject to this request. The applicants are seeking a formalized vacation of the city's interest in a portion of Crest Road that currently cuts into the southwest corner of their property. The new proposed configuration would enhance the city's ability to maintain Crest Road more efficiently and allow the applicants to make permanent improvements. The current road is difficult to plow and maintain due to the manner in which the right-of-way extends into the corner of the property without a cul-de-sac, making plowing and road maintenance more difficult. If the vacation is approved, the length of the road will be cut in half, making it much easier for staff to back down when plowing snow is required or when maintenance on the gravel is needed. All existing utility easements would remain in place as they are. Staff is also recommending that a condition of approval of the requested vacation, that the applicant be responsible for the maintenance in the area outside of the improved road surface within a portion of the Crest Road right-of-way. The Planning and Zoning Commission agreed with and also made this recommendation. The proposed vacation leaves a strip of right-of-way that would make maintenance difficult. This would be accomplished through a license to maintain right-of-way that will run in perpetuity with the property. This agreement is included in your packets and is part of the process. In addition, City Council is authorized to impose reasonable conditions upon the vacation of any right-of-way, including but not limited to the payment of consideration by the landowners receiving benefit from the sale. Staff and the city attorney, as directed by City Council, have negotiated costs for the proposed vacated parcel based on current and relevant information that was obtained through an appraisal commissioned by the city manager, an independent appraisal obtained by the petitioners, as well as relevant sale of similar comparable parcels. The recommended amount of this consideration is $50,028 based on the calculations in Exhibit F of your packets. Consistent with previous discussions, the area proposed for vacation is drawn so that no private ownership other than that of the applicants is contiguous to the proposed vacation. And as such, if the vacation is approved, title to the vacated right-of-way would vest in the applicants alone, according to City Code and Title 43 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. That is all staff has for their presentation. The owner, Jordan Lacob, is also here and would like to say a few words to council.
Okay. You're welcome to come to the podium.
Thank you. Hi, thank you very much for considering this proposal.
Give your name and address.
Sorry, Jordan Lacob, 3 Crest Road. Appreciate all the hard work that's gone into getting this to a point that I think is kind of reasonable for everyone, and the consideration that you guys are giving this. You can see on the slide, I guess behind you, and I think that's in your packets as well, just kind of the general plan that we're looking at for the landscaping and improvements to the road and to the driveway area that we were looking to do. And it's not that complex, but I think it'll really improve the look and feel of the driveway and also into the neighborhood. And that's really about it. We've kind of been through this, so if you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, before the public hearing, let me open it for questions then from council for the staff or to the owner. Councilor Sheldon, any questions?
No, sir.
Councilor Gallagher?
No.
Councilor Will?
Jay, could you one more time go over the quid pro quo and just how it works between the maintenance, what is maintained, what isn't maintained, relative to the section that we're vacating and anything going between that and the street?
So this is, I wish it was black and white throughout the entire city, but it's different everywhere you are in the city. This section, historically, because they're truly not in front of any of these properties, the city has maintained the green area. It's, if you went out there and looked at it, it's very natural and has a lot more scrub and dead trees, and has not been improved. We've just, taken the dead trees out that are dangerous. In this particular situation, that's what we have done in the past. So this agreement would be on the owner to then maintain this portion of Crest Road as it comes out to Cherry Lane Drive.
Including snow plowing in the wintertime?
No, the city, the area in green is the unimproved portion of the right-of-way. The city would still do the snow plowing to the new property line. So we'd back down there to the new improvements that are proposed and plow out, and then we would do any gravel maintenance that is needed. And because it's a single home, I think it's only every few years that we have to go in there and add a little gravel and grade that out. It's not like the other dirt roads in the area that are needing constant maintenance.
Okay, thank you. Yep. It was there in black and white, but I wanted to be sure I understood what I was reading.
Councilor Savati?
No questions.
Just to make sure, it's in the packet, but this went before the Planning Commission, and they voted unanimously to recommend approval of this as well?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, I'll open a public hearing. We have a sign up. Thank you. Okay, we have Laura Chrisman. You have the floor.
Okay, Dan, I'll try to speak louder. Okay, is that better? Okay, I'll use my grandmother yells at the kids. I do have some legal questions about this, but for my comments right now, this is about policy and what I see as very bad policy. And here's why. I don't care if you vacate that corner, whatever. But the way it's being done is, even if it's technically legal, it's just wrong. And here's why. Under Colorado law, when you vacate a street, you generally, the person on one side gets half, and the person on the other side gets half. The statute says that if you vacate a portion, or you don't vacate a portion, then you do not have to convey that portion to the, in this case, the gentleman to the south. And let me clarify, I don't know who that is. I know it's not Gary Dragle, but I have no idea who lives there. And I don't like what he's done in the front of his house, but never mind. Anyway, that would be the result of that. What is happening is, through a legal machination and this 5-foot strip for public use and benefit, I don't know, maybe I could get it, you are defeating this man's right, or woman's right, the family's right, to have half that vacated land conveyed to them. Now, someone might argue, oh, we had to retain that in order to clean up that area. Well, once you vacate it, there is nothing to keep clean. It is owned by this guy. He can tear it out, do whatever. So it's a sham. But it might be legal. But what this proposal does, it says, we don't want to deal with this guy. We want to take a preference for a neighbor. We want to convey the land that would have otherwise gone to this gentleman to the neighbor. And to add insult to injury, we want to profit from that. We want the money that would otherwise have been his if he had negotiated. Now, how do you solve this? Now, again, this is a policy issue. If this is legal, this is a policy issue. But you would wonder, I kind of had Mike said, do people not trust the city? Well, maybe not, because this is inherently wrong, in my opinion. It's just wrong. If he doesn't want it, if the neighbor to the south doesn't want it, just go to him. Get him to sign a consent and waiver that's recordable, or a quitclaim deed, and you're done. And he's been treated fairly. But if he does want it, don't create a legal sham, in my opinion, but might be technically enforceable, to defeat him of his rights otherwise. It just bothers me. The other thing is, I don't think you can do license into perpetuity because of of course, the rule against perpetuities. But that's a whole different issue. Easements you can do, licenses not so much. But that's just a technicality. I would propose that you put this on hold and go to the neighbor and say, if we vacate this, do you waive your right? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Also sign up Rob Eber. You have the floor.
Good evening, members of council, Mr. Mayor. If I may, as a point of order, just ask for a couple questions before my clock begins. One, my wife Leslie was supposed to be here and have 5 minutes, but I ask that I be given her 5 minutes if possible.
I'll be generous with you, Rob, but I think our rules don't allow us to transfer time to others, but
All right,
I'll be generous.
I'll try and move along
We
as
don't
quickly
have a
as I
long,
can.
we don't have a long line, so go ahead.
And secondly, if you would look at your packets, I believe it's page 130 of your packets. It's the aerial view of the area that we're talking about right there. I don't know if you can put those two pictures up side by side, but the point of order on this is that on that picture, the east edge actually needs to go further right up against the pillars that make up the driveway. So it shows there is actually more touching between 10 Cherry Lane Drive and 3 Crest Road, which goes to the point that Laura Chrisman made. But I just, as a point of order, I wanted to make sure that that drawing is accurate. And it's shown and confirmed by the picture that was up there already, which shows that the easement or the vacation request parcel actually begins being measured from the gates of the driveway. So, with that said, let me jump in. My name is Robert Eber. I live at 3 Middle Road. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'll talk real loud so Dan Shelton can hear me. I appreciate the opportunity to come here tonight and talk about Crest Road. I want to start by saying that I don't know the applicant. I don't know the owners of 10 Cherry Lane, and I don't know the owners of 2 Cherry Lane either. I assume they are all fine people, and they are my neighbors. So it's in my own interest to be able to get along. I rise in opposition to this tonight, not because of any individual, but because of the principles with which it raises. What we're talking about here tonight, and I'm going to move fairly quickly in order to make through my time, is approximately a 5,700 square foot, almost, I guess I'll call it a trapezoid that is about 70 by 55 on the east. It's about 70 by 60 on the western edge, leaving approximately a 5-foot edge that's on the green piece to the south. That is approximately 350 square feet that is going to be left in city inventory. However, it's going to be useless because it's on the other side of a fence and squeezed in between what will be the property line of the applicant, and therefore nobody will be able to make use of it, and no compensation is even given for this, though it is effectively being given to the applicant. Let me backtrack and say that in order to approve the vacation, the standard for approval is that it's in the public interest to vacate this. It's my argument that the city does not get adequate public interest benefits in order to approve this vacation. I want to place this property in context because of the fact that it contains a license to where the applicant will take care of certain pieces, and there's a license on a piece that it will not own that will remain in Cherry Hills Village. To the west of the property, and if you can look at the aerial, that would help us put this into context, is 2 Cherry Lane. To the south is 10 Cherry Lane. Both have fully landscaped the area. Let me take a step back. Say the black line that you see to the south side of 2 Cherry Lane and to the west side of 10 Cherry Lane is the village right-of-way. As you see, the 2 Cherry Lane is fully landscaped all the way down and into the right-of-way, all the way down to Cherry Lane. And 10 Cherry Lane has done the same, including going so far as to illegally place a fence in the right-of-way, all the way on the western edge, and has completely privatized both of the parts of the right-of-way that is now basically incorporated into 2 and 10 Cherry Lane. This is important because the piece of the license that is being given or agreed to by the owner of 3 Crest Road will be to take care of a small sliver that is sort of in between both pieces of this bigger, broad piece of right-of-way that is, dare I say, illegally taken and appropriated by the owners of 2 Cherry Lane and 10 Cherry Lane. You can see that because they have fully landscaped. If you look at 2 Cherry Lane, you can see all of the trees on the south part, and on the west, in fact, of 10 Cherry Lane, the owner, not the current owner, but the prior owner, put an entire fence around the property that basically goes right up against Crest Road and right up against Cherry Lane Drive. Both have fully incorporated that landscaping into their property. The fence on 10 Cherry Lane effectively even renders the right-of-way unusable by the public, and they have fully planted trees there. There is no license, to my understanding, of 2 Cherry Lane and 10 Cherry Lane. Frankly, neither sought permission. They just added it and they did it. The area, to my understanding, is a floodplain that is used for floodplain drainage through the northwest and passes all the way through what is now Volunteer Park on the other side of Parkway Avenue. I have spoken with Mr. Goldie about this. In fact, we spoke yesterday. His comment to me was that the village does allow landowners to landscape within the right-of-way, and we talked about the little 10-foot lane areas that are in front of many of our properties where our property ends and the road begins. As you see, the space that would be inside of a trapezoid on 2 Cherry Lane, as well as whatever shape you want to put on 10 Cherry Lane that is in the right-of-way, is far bigger than what we're talking about on the vacation request tonight, but they have not done anything there. My point is that what ought to be done, frankly, under the guise of what's been done at 2 Cherry Lane and 10 Cherry Lane, I think that the person on 3 Crest Road should withdraw their applicant and just commandeer the land the same way 2 Cherry Lane and 10 Cherry Lane has done it, and not go through this, because apparently the village is okay with people landscaping into the right-of-way, and that would address this whole thing in its entirety. However, the landowner at 3 Crest Lane, the applicant, has taken the high road and come in and formally said, I want to move and vacate this. I appreciate that, and I think that that's the right way to do it. However, I think that the license that is being granted here is right smack in the middle of these 2 huge chunks of right-of-way that are not being properly addressed by the city. It's my contention in that the city should address this piece that is subject to the license at the same time it fully addresses 2 Cherry Lane and 10 Cherry Lane's incursion into the right-of-way. Therefore, it's not in the public's interest to address this as part of this vacation process. The applicant says it will maintain a small sliver of the vegetated right-of-way south of the gravel road and to the illegal fence that is part of 10 Cherry Lane. And that it will then go out to the rest of Cherry Lane. The city memo says the city benefits from not having to maintain the vegetation or to plow it. It's my contention that the public interest is not served by that those are not strong interests. The maintenance that needs to be done, frankly, having a wider public right-of-way in there will allow the city to go in and push the snow all the way into the southeast corner. However, even after this is done, if it's approved, the city's going to have to narrowly back into the right-of-way on Crest Road and probably only use a pickup truck to be able to plow Crest Road. That doesn't seem very interesting, very efficient, and frankly, it's easier to just go forward and backwards as it currently exists. Number 2, the maintenance amount that is being done on the applicant's piece of property that will be incorporated is not really that important from a public interest standpoint, because everybody's required to take care of the right-of-way that is adjacent to their property anyway. So I don't think we gain anything there. My comment on this, putting it into context, is we have a gigantic area of right-of-way that needs to be addressed as one whole rather than piecing it out as part of this license. It's the fiduciary duty of Cherry Hills Village to protect all the interests of the taxpayers, and I don't believe that this does anything to address the entire taxpayer problem except for it benefiting the person at 3 Crest Road. Plain and simple, it's our right-of-way, and we want it back, even if it means making 10 Cherry Lane take down the fence that they put illegally up. We don't ask bank robbers to or allow them to keep their money after they've taken it, even if after a passage of time, and the same thing should be here as far as 10 Cherry Lane. As far as 2 Cherry Lane, I don't believe that the irrigation place that they've got in place will at all allow any kind of drainage flow so that the right-of-way would handle a 100-year flood, and I don't think there's been any calculations on that. Number 2, and more importantly, is that the consideration is absurdly low, making this public interest not being met by the proposed vacation. We have 3 appraisals, the city appraisal at 147,000 feet, $147,000 plus change, $25.78 per square foot. Applicants at $5,000, or a total per acre price of $380,000. If you have other land that you want to sell me in the village for for $380,000, I want it. The payment, frankly, was originally calculated at $9.78 using 2018 data from a prior sale, not market value, but prior data, which is not market value and shouldn't be considered. Then it turns around and it uses a low escalator that is not relevant to current conditions. And number three, it has a 2-year calculation on time frame, not the 4 years since it was originally done. Finally, after the consideration and the rebates that are done for the maintenance that'll take place and the fact that they have to take care of asphalt that the city didn't even put in there, you end up with a price of $8.73 per square foot for the amount of money that that Jay had made a comment is the consideration that's getting there. Even had you split the appraisals, you would have come up with a number of $76,625. Mr. Holden previously commented about the value of real estate in the village and how it's gone through the ceiling. Simply put, $380,000 is nowhere close to the market value that the day after this piece of property is annexed into Three Crest Road, that property will be valued at. Even at using the split value of $76,000, which equates to $583,000 an acre, it's an extraordinarily low amount. The fiduciary duty of the village is to protect taxpayers and get the maximum amount. On this consideration, we have heard a lot of discussion that we are facing some financial difficulties or potentially financial issues. To give away even a penny, let a dime, let alone almost $100,000 here smacks of not in the public interest. Frankly, there should be no discount, there should be no rebates, and the proper answer does not mean allowing them to make use of the right-of-way. The rebate for the asphalt that is already given is only added insult to the sweetheart deal of the low price per square foot. Quincy Farms, a number of months ago, in the discussions there came up where I believe it was a realtor came in and indicated that she had asked the Arapahoe County assessor to value the land of the Quincy Farm, and it was over $1 million an acre. The city appraisal on this piece came in at $147,650, or $1.1 million per acre. Yet the sale on this is approximately $380,000 per acre. Here's my suggested solution. Get full value for the appraised piece of property. The $147,000 appraisal that the city commissioned almost brings into question the validity of the applicant's appraisal that comes in at only $5,000. The alternative, if you absolutely say, we're going to still give a little bit of room here, is to use the county assessor value. The applicant has 1.47 acres currently, valued at $1.224 million under the county 2021 appraisal. It's $833,000 per acre, or $19.12 per square foot. The landowner did not appeal their property right tax assessment. Apparently, the property tax land valuation is not a problem enough that they would appeal the property tax. The 5,720 feet that we are talking about approximately here yields a $109,000, $338 value. If you don't want to use the highest and you don't want to use the lowest, there's an independent one sitting right there that's the county assessor. It comes out at $109,000. To me, eliminate the license. Get rid of it. You can address all of the right-of-way at one point. If you're worried about the value and the ease of taking care of it, the extra dollar you're going to recoup is more than the $20,000 that you have put in as the benefit you're getting for the maintenance of the right-of-way. You're getting an additional almost $60,000, $55,000, and that more than covers the $20,000, which I'm not even sure under the city budget when they're already doing work is really valued at $20,000 over the course of 20 years.
Thank you. Rod, are you about ready to?
I am. My conclusion is that this is not meeting the standard for a vacation. It is not in the public interest. Two reasons. One, we're not addressing the right-of-way. 2, we're not getting enough consideration. And I'll just add 3, I don't believe that we came in yesterday and looked at the conveyance of this piece of Crest Road. It's for the benefit of and use of the public, but it does not convey the underlying land. It is my question to you all to make darn sure that you have a legal opinion saying that you have the right to transfer this piece of property, let alone the questions that it brings up for Chen Cherry Lane's owner. But I submit to you that all these questions lead to a conclusion that right now, this deal is nowhere close to meeting the requirements for public interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eber. I will let the landowner respond too, since we're still in public hearing, if you like.
Yes, this is Jordan Lakeup. He brought up a number of points. I think we've been through quite a few of them. I know he hasn't had access to all the discussions with committees and council before. I think just in terms of I'm just trying to go through his points here really quickly. In terms of the margins on the red outline there, I think the other drawing is the more accurate. I'm forgetting the word, the paid for drawing by the engineers and the survey, that I was looking for. So those are correct. I think the other one was drawn just for presentation benefits. I mean, that corner of the land is a non-buildable area, being in the far corners of the land. So I can understand, trying to lump the acreage into the overall cost per acre of the lot and other comparables here in the city. But I think if you look at what the land is able to be used for, where it's located with the trees overhanging it, et cetera, that it's not quite the same piece of comparable land. The city is not officially using it for anything, and it's only got access to the one driveway. In terms of my neighbor, I've talked to him in the past. He's fully aware, to the south of me, of the plans. He's received all of the mailings that you guys have required, and I think if he had an issue with it, he would be here tonight, and as well as the CEFs on the I guess west side of me. So they haven't asked me any questions. I don't know if they've asked you guys any other questions. And in terms of, I'm happy to take care of the sliver of road. I know that that's mainly just trees and bushes. So there's been an occasional dead limb or two that I think the city has been come in and cut down, but I don't foresee it being a large burden or anything on me to take care of that piece of road and maintain it. Actually, it'll look better because I'll trim it more often and clean it up than what the city is currently doing. And I think that addresses most of the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I assume there's no one else wishing to speak. If not, I will close the public hearing at 7:13. And now it's back to council. So council deliberations. Council members, questions for staff, questions for the city attorney. Councilor Sheldon.
Okay, thank you, staff, and Laura and Rob and Jordan for your comments and presentations. It's given me a few things to think about. Some of the things that Mr. Eber brought up. I guess I am curious why, at the end of the day, we did keep the 5-foot sliver that runs along the southern PL as part of city-owned and maintained property, as opposed to conveying that with the additional 5,600 square feet. Any thoughts on that, Jay? Any background?
So yes, that was left there to, we gave the applicant the option, and I believe you were the one that brought it up, to ask the neighbors to be involved. They said they did not want to do that. They did not want to complicate this as it went forward. They just wanted to do this on their own. And so that option was out there. it's not part of the process for the city to go out and ask each adjoining person. We have a process where we notice those people that they can come talk to us about it. But the city code and title, I lost my notes, 43 of the Colorado statute allows us, since it's not contiguous with the other property, then it doesn't trigger the need to involve all property owners. But we did give the applicant that option. They chose to keep this to a single party transaction.
So, sorry, I'm going to take a giant step back here, and if I miss this, I'm just trying to get my arms around it. That 5 feet you're saying is on 10 Cherry Lane's property?
No, that's in city right of way.
So,
Once the vacation becomes parallel to two properties, then it triggers Title 43, and it cannot be a single owner's, can't be a single transaction. Then you have to involve all of the properties. The applicant chose to do it this way to make it a single transaction, not involving other people.
what would be required right now, hypothetically, if we wanted that 5-foot strip to become part of, I guess, 3 Crest Road, the Lake Cobb property?
I would,
Would we have to involve the southern property owner at 10 Cherry Lane?
I would ask the city attorney to answer that question.
So if it seems odd to have that 5-foot strip, right? It reminds me of the term spite strip, or, it doesn't seem like it's logical for the city to continue to own and maintain a 5-foot section.
The maintenance part of this proposal before you is that the maintenance won't be on Mr.
Well,
should the property be
yeah,
vacated.
okay, I understand that, so.
Yeah.
I have Dan's same question.
Seems weird, though, that we wouldn't,
Why would we do that?
why didn't we require that to be part of this deal?
I don't know the answer to that question.
And if we did want it to be part of the deal, would it trigger anything more than negotiations or discussions with the property owner at 3 Crest Road, the applicant here tonight? Would it involve other parties?
Well, I need to look at that a little bit more closely.
I think, I heard some interesting things tonight, and I actually am looking at the geometry now of what's going to be left of the Crest Road right-of-way. If this red line is where it is on the other exhibit, it's no longer a straight line in any direction. It's not perpendicular to Crest Road itself, the actual new property line. At the end, it's going to have some jigs and jags in it. It just seems like maybe this could have been done better. And I appreciate, Mr. Lacob, that you have been, I think your initial application was over a year ago. I appreciate that, and that it shouldn't take this long to get through this process. I really feel for you. But I do think there's maybe a better solution here that may not get all the public happy at the end of the day if council does end up recommending approval of this or approving it. But I'm not sure I'm really lined up with this whole geometry of this property line now, and then that strip being included as well. I'd like to see that included with what is being conveyed if we were to approve it. I can get my arms around the value. We can argue values all night long, and I'm not going to suggest that I want to even get into the values. I think there's more of a policy question, and if we are going to do something about it, I do agree with some of you who have spoke tonight that it should probably be done correctly, and if we do have issues with others in the right-of-way, our adjacent neighbors in the right-of-way, if that does not meet our code, maybe we need to send our code compliance out there. Maybe it does meet our code. I haven't heard staff opine to that yet at all. I think for now, those are my comments, and what it might mean for me is, after I hear the rest of council, I might suggest a continuance, maybe just for a couple weeks for us to, I might be able to get my arms around this a little bit better if I thought this through a little bit, looked at maybe a way to soften up the property line that we're drawing here perpendicular to Crest Road. Because it's going to leave this little weird sliver on the very northwest corner of 10 Cherry Lane in the way we're doing this. I don't know. I'll leave it at that.
Councilor Gallagher.
I appreciate Mr. Lacob coming tonight and being so patient and endeavoring through this process over this past year. And to Laura and Rob's comments, appreciated and certainly raises, quite honestly, questions. And I think I think there's some legitimate questions that are here that I think there's probably, hate to delay this anymore, but let's make sure we do this right. And so I would like to understand and hear more of staff's comments on the comments of former Mayor Chrisman and Mr. Eber on these areas such as the right-of-way, and how is it legitimate that a guy can put up a fence in that right-of-way and just put it up? Is that okay?
That is not okay. It's always been the city's policy to, that was put in over 25 years ago. If they would have, if at any time they come forward for a new permit, that would have to be moved to the proper place. But we haven't gone back. It has not been our policy to go back on any of these fences that are in the wrong place that have historically been there. But if we see them going up, then yes. But if they've been there historically, no. And then as for 2 Cherry Lane, there is no violations there. That's no different than anybody putting landscaping in the right-of-way in front of their home, no matter how wide that right-of-way is.
As long as they maintain it.
Yes, and there's no fence.
Okay, so we've got a
And Councilman Gallagher, can I just add on to that real quick? I also had a chance to speak with Ralph before he left about the northern one. There is a drainage ditch, I believe, that is between the property line and the trees in question. I believe all those, if I'm not mistaken, and Jay, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, I think the trees are all behind, so to speak.
Yes, the trees are behind the drainage on that one.
And
the fence on the south one on 10 is actually on the wrong side of the ditch.
Yeah, I don't know about that one as much. I just know on the northern one that they're on the back side of the ditch.
Put that aerial slide back up. I want to make sure I'm understanding. So right where that says Cherry Hills Village, that's the
No, it's my understanding that the drainage ditch is between the road and
Yeah,
those.
the drainage ditch is closer to the road than to the trees.
Yes.
You know, there's a ditch between Cherry Lane and those trees in
So-
the proper place, doing the drainage properly.
So I asked him about trees and their placement in the right of way and, discussing things like, well, we can't have trees that prevent people from parking. And he agreed with that, and he relayed that, it's really hard sometimes with work that gets done on the edge of a property. We don't have a hard curb in most cases in this town. And knowing where the property line is just while you're out there is really difficult. And especially then when you talk about things that don't require building permits, like trees, that work changes, evolves, moves over time. And is there a possibility that trees got planted in the right of way? I think his response to me was, heck yeah. And there's probably one that happened last week that we don't know about.
And they're allowed to be planted in the
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not saying that everything out there is perfect by any stretch. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just saying these things evolve over time and are there for a long time. And then at some point, the city has to evaluate, are we going to go on a proactive search and, start knocking on people's doors saying, excuse me, that I don't, we haven't historically done that very much. Obviously, we're a complaint-driven department. So I just provide all that for context. I'm in no way suggesting that the fence is legal. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just providing a little bit more context to the conversation.
Well, and I think it's important that we all understand that that's not what's at issue tonight. That's not what's in front of us. 10 and 2 Cherry Lane are not what's in front of us, and whether they're in violation or not. We need to stay focused on what's in front of us, and the rest of it's kind of background noise for us, really.
Councilor Brown, any questions?
I too would just like to say thank you for your patience. I know this has been a long process, and I appreciate the comments that have been brought up. In terms of the compensation amount, that number was negotiated pretty heavily, considering a lot of factors, not only sort of the generic value of the land, but to Mr. Lacobb's point, that land, you can't sell that little section of land to anybody. And it really doesn't have any use to the public, nor the only person that it has any use to is the owner of 3 Crest Road at this point. So while I understand the math involved and there are a lot of different numbers, there are a lot of factors that affect the value of that property. And I am comfortable with that agreement. I know that it took a lot of back and forth, and I appreciate the willingness of the applicant to negotiate in good faith with the city, and I believe the city negotiated in good faith as well. So for me, the amount of compensation is not necessarily what is at issue. What I am concerned about is kind of precisely what Councilor Sheldon mentioned, and in particular, unfortunately, something that I heard for the first time tonight, which is that the reason there's a 5-foot strip was so that we wouldn't have to include the neighbor to the south in the negotiations. That is extremely concerning to me. Clearly, the neighbor to the south has received notice and could have attended any meeting. And maybe that statement tonight was a misstatement, but that is not the way I believe the city of Cherry Hills should operate. I think we should be very forthcoming. I think it would be worth, I do think we need to involve the owners of 10 Cherry Lane, and I think that we need to, at a minimum, get some sort of written release from them if they're not interested and they have no issues with what's going on. I also don't think that the city should continue to own a 5-foot strip of land in between two. That does not serve the public interest at all. And in fact, what would serve the public interest in this process is cleaning this up and not making it worse and making it more complicated. So if we're going to clean it up, I think that's a legitimate benefit to the public. The public has no use for that little snippet of land. There's no trail there. There's no anything. But it would be of benefit to the public to clean this up. And, you know, if that means taking the line all the way down to where it intersects with 10 Cherry Lane or whatever that means, I definitely am concerned about that strip that remains there. And then, you know, I agree with Councilor Sheldon. I've made notes of some other issues that have come up that I'll bring up in my report, but they are not relevant to the application that's before us here tonight. So I guess I would say I have reservations about making a decision at this point.
Councilor Wheel.
Thank you. You know, sitting in this position, all the good comments are usually taken.
Sorry.
But, well, and of course, let me echo the thank yous to everybody. It was it's a good and thoughtful discussion. I have pretty much the same concerns, which is to say, you know, it almost, I think to former Mayor Chrisman's point, you know, there is the potential for some legal risk. I don't think we've said anything that negates that. And at the same time, this 5-foot strip just hits me as a problem waiting to happen. If I were sitting there in 10 Cherry Lane, sure, I might not attend this meeting, but I might go ahead and file a lawsuit and say, hey, you know, this whole artifice is just designed to exclude me from the process, and so on and so forth. There's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. I think that we can execute or should execute some legal documents that sort it out with the neighbors. I don't like doing things that are intended to be kind of workarounds that may not have the substance that they need or the intent that ought to be there. The valuation question, I'd just like to hear more debate about that, because I don't, you know, Rob raises some good points, but then again, so does Katie and Jay as well. So I need a little bit more time to think that through. And then this whole business of right-of-way feels to me like a topic that we should get on the docket and address in a more substantial way. I think that being reactive kind of puts us in a position of anything I can get away with for a little while is okay. And so if I don't want people parking on the right-of-way in front of my house, I put a bunch of boulders out there. And if I don't get caught, well, they've been there a while, you know. And so I don't end up having to move them. And yet I don't know that there really is a right or an intent for us to permit that sort of stuff to happen, whether it's boulders or a fence or what have you. And so being reactive doesn't feel right, and letting people, if they were successful initially, giving them a pass doesn't quite feel right either. I don't know that I have a better solution at this moment, but it feels to me like something that we ought to work and develop maybe a little more comprehensive approach to things that exist, and remedies there, and things that might occur. So if I was pressed for a vote tonight, I couldn't support this because I think there are just too many open questions. My preference would be that we continue this to a date in the near future and focus on it with a sense of urgency, because, again, you've been patient and I'm not looking to kick the can down the road. I'd like to get it resolved, but I'd like to get it resolved in a way that feels satisfactory. That's all I have.
Councilor Safani.
Nothing more to add other than echoing what everybody else said, and just allow us a few more weeks. Let us just clear some of these, I would say, legitimate concern that are brought up, and we'll get back to you, but I would urge us to come up with a deadline for ourselves, or a timeline, so we don't let this thing drag for 3 more months or any, just, is it a month, 2 months, whatever it is. Let's make a commitment to just resolve this and move forward.
Well, I think when you do that, we'd have to entertain, what I'm hearing is a motion to continue to a date certain, and that was something we'd have to do. City Attorney?
Mayor, first of all, you mentioned that you would close the public hearing. I think, the intent was to close the public comment portion.
Comment portion, I'm
public
sorry.
hearing,
Yes.
But you did state that the public hearing was closed. And so what we are faced with is a procedural accuracy and ensuring that, and there's not provision for that in your code. But I think what we're looking to do is hold a public hearing, continue this consideration of this ordinance, and I think the best process would be to renotice per the code,
Okay.
The public hearing, so that everyone that has an interest would have the opportunity to know about and attend. And just so that you do know, the code does provide that that notice is by mail at least 20 days before the date of the meeting.
So that puts us at,
May 17th, we've been doing some fast math over
Okay.
here. And I just want to say also, I had no indication whether or not it was the case that there was any sort of subterfuge engaged in here. I don't know if that is what is on people's minds, but, the statute does provide that if the less than the entire right-of-way, width of a roadway is vacated, then title to the vacated portion shall vest in the owners of the land abutting the vacated portion. And I think that is the route that was going here. But again, no understanding that there was any subterfuge involved.
And if I could clarify that, because at the time when the applicants made the application, there was nobody living in 10. It was in the middle of changing, and so there was you know, it wasn't to avoid talking to the people at 10. So if that's how I came across, I don't want to make the applicant sound like they were avoiding that. It was, there was just nobody there to communicate with. And they thought it would be a better process just to leave a smaller strip and move forward so they could try to improve this area.
May I?
Yeah, of course.
I'm
Councilor Shelby.
curious what happened at first reading. Did nobody talk about this?
No, we set the date.
Oh, we set the date. We didn't have the public hearing. It's like, how did this get by 6 smart people? Okay.
No, this is, sorry. Our,
Excuse me, we're out of order here.
yeah, that's enough.
I do have one more comment. Okay,
Sure.
so I appreciate that. We just set the date. We didn't talk any of the specific land use business. I want to maybe retract my comment about the geometry. I've been sitting here thinking about it. I guess there's two ways to look at it. Either we could straighten out the lot and square it off as a 90-degree square or rectangle, and then have a weird right-of-way, or have a straight right-of-way or perpendicular to Crest Road, do the line, and then have a weird-shaped lot. And I'm not sure one is right and one's wrong. My first initial reaction was, we're going to have this weird right-of-way line if you follow the red lines, but I'm not sure it's any weirder than elsewhere that we may have in the city. It's a little odd, but.
Well, I think these are all questions for, decide between now and May 17th. I think what I'm hearing from council is there's lots of, the sense on council is to look at this and see if we can't come up with a better solution without the 5 foot. And in fairness, and to the applicant, this is really the first time we've delved into this. So, I'll let you say something if you'd like.
Just real briefly. I mean, in terms of the curve of the road, the line does kind of follow the natural curve of the road. So in regards to your question, and then also in terms of the lot to the south of me, I think you can see the dotted line, which is their property line, and it really curves up, and our two properties don't really touch until you get to the corner where the gate is. So there is a strip of land that we were trying to take into consideration that is the city's, that does not touch the land to the south of us. So they don't have access to that road. That would be through, larger trees. So in terms of the access point, that was part of the original thought process on how we would determine where we wanted to draw the new lot lines in talking to the city. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of context behind why that ended up being there, in the first place.
I appreciate that clarification. Did you have something, Councilor Wheeler?
Well, I've got a question, I guess. It seems to me that the southern boundary of this, and I guess by southern I mean on the bottom of the page, of the property we conveyed, really is more or less following the fence line rather than the right-of-way, the dotted line on the right-of-way. And, if I were drawing it, I'd either, to Dan's point, draw it straight, or I'd follow the right-of-way line rather than this fence that isn't supposed to be there in the first place. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something here.
No, all of those factors were taken into consideration. And
But isn't the dotted line,
the dotted line is a fence line in the middle of the right-of-way, yes.
so if that fence falls down,
Which
then
dotted line are we talking about?
The fence, to the bottom of the green.
Yeah. We don't have like a laser pointer, but
No, I
this
think,
dotted line.
well, that's the fence
Right,
that
that's
shouldn't
the
be
fence.
there.
Okay.
And I think the dotted line.
The dotted arc
nice
is the
gradual
road, yeah.
curve is the right-of-way line.
So
And
No.
so if that fence fell down, we'd
Yeah,
have
that's right.
an odder situation.
is the fence on
No.
Mr.
No.
Lakehobb's property here to the?
No, the fence is in the middle of the right-of-way.
But what about all the way over here? The fence looks like it stops right there? Yeah.
This is the right-of-way.
Yep, now go all the way to the corner where, yes, where's the fence go there?
It turns into a chain link fence there.
And is that on your property?
It's on the property line.
Is it It looks like the property line is lower than that. It looks like the property line is this solid line right there.
Yeah, well,
The dotted line is above it. Dan, stand up.
So you're saying you think that this is the problem?
That's where I was reading it. That's why I was saying we should bring bring that down to there, but
We're designing
then
by
the
committee.
fence would be on your property.
I think this is all great information.
But, okay, let me bring order. I'm gonna bring order. Hold on a second. I will now, I think we all are on the same thought pattern. We're all on board. Let's, I'll entertain city attorney, city manager, you want to say something before I?
Yeah, just to clarify expectations, if further discussions result in another option that includes, for example, a new party being introduced into this process, which, might be possible, I'm not sure, we will probably need to go back through planning and zoning again.
We may have an entirely new application.
If we have a new applicant, so to speak.
Well, let's deal with that if we get to it.
But I just want to make sure that expectations are known, because I know that council is appropriately concerned about unfair or timelines that are too long. I'm just wanting to get it out there that might be a factor.
Let me ask a point of clarification real quick. Is it possible to pick up this 5 feet, just like we're picking up this 5,600 square feet, and put it in with one legal description with the 5,600 square feet and run it it look like an upside down flag, whereby the 5 feet runs all the way over there? Could we do that procedurally and legally? Could we do that if we wanted to? And I'm not saying anyone else or anyone here does at all. Could we do that tonight if we wanted to, make it approval with condition?
Approve it as a condition by that.
That the legal description be changed and attached as a new attachment, and
that you would convey all of that area between the fence and add that in?
but then Title 43 would kick in.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a problem.
I want to hear the attorney say it. I'm asking our attorney the question.
That is the problem.
So that would, by virtue of doing that, it would then touch the neighbor, which would then in turn kick in more
Best abutting, yeah.
neighboring support and cooperation and whatnot.
Well, and result.
And what?
And result if approved, right, the vacation.
What do you
That's
mean?
in
What do you
the
mean?
adjacent.
Result if approved? Can you put your microphone? Is your microphone on? No, sorry.
Yeah, so if you add that in and you're all of a sudden abutting the neighborhood, the neighbor, then the property that is vacated vests in, sort of splits down the middle. And so you end up with a different result.
Could we do that? Is there a way to give 2.5 feet of that strip to the southern neighbor tonight without consulting with them?
I wouldn't do that.
You could, but I'm not sure they want it.
No, I don't think that's.
I can see where this is going here, though.
Well, you have another
gonna end up-
option, which is, and I have to say.
We're going to end up turning this in from a 13-month process for Mr. Lacob to an 18-month process like that.
And on that note, you have the option to deny and have applicant come back with a separate new application. That is another option that you have, rather than continue.
Yeah.
It is cleaner, but it is time-consuming.
No, I think that there's a possible intermediary steps. We don't know. We have to look at it. So let's, and that we can save by continuing this until, and renoticing it for a new public hearing on May 7th. I would suggest we do that. If we can find a way to avoid having to re-involve, planning and zoning, if we can, by having that landowner waive it or something else we can do, or maybe we can look at it.
It's a novel question. We'll consider that.
From my perspective, I'm interested in doing this fast, but above and beyond that, I'm interested in doing it correctly. So I want to be expeditious, but I don't want to be cutting corners, so we don't have to do this, don't have to do that, if that's what we're supposed to do, because those rules and regulations have been there for a reason. And, I don't want to try and circumvent that.
Yeah, and those rules and regulations are to give notice to the adjoining landowners. If the adjoining landowners come in and say, this is great with us, we might be able to solve the problem, right? That's it. I don't know, and I can't opine on it yet. We'll have to take a closer look at it. But I will think now's probably the time to entertain a motion to continue this to a date certain and republish, and also the motion should say renotice the public hearing.
Yeah, continue consideration of Council Bill 7, Series 2022.
So a motion would sound something like, I move to continue Council Bill 7, 2022 until May 17th.
And to, as the mayor said, to renotice to
And to
notice.
renotice as required per our code. Sorry, Mr. Lacob. We got to get it right, though. Council people are right up here. It's got to be done right. I move to approve, I move to continue Council Bill 7, Series 2022 to May 17th, 2022, and to have the appropriate notices posted and published as required by our code.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. So we need a roll call on this, or just no for continuance? Just all voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Yes.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. All right. Next on the agenda for us is Council Bill 8, Series 2022, amending the budget for fiscal year 2022 by creating a fund for the Southmoor Circle and Hudson Parkway General Improvement District and appropriating funds therein.
No.
This is the second and final reading. Director Sager.
Good evening, Mayor, members of City Council. Before you tonight on second and final reading is Council Bill 8, Series 2022. If approved tonight, the 2022 budget will be amended to create the Southmoor Circle and Hudson Parkway General Improvement District Fund and to appropriate the funds. There have been no changes to the Council Bill or the budget since the first reading. Staff is available to answer any questions Council may have at this time.
Any questions for Jessica?
No.
Councilor Sheldon? I'm sorry. I'll go to Councilor Brown. Done. Councilor Wheel? Councilor Safavi? This is item 8B. We're good on it. All right, then I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve Council Bill 8, Series 2022, amending the budget for fiscal year 2022 by creating a fund for the Cherry Hills Village Southmoor Circle and Hudson Parkway General Improvement District and appropriating funds therein on second and final reading.
Second.
A motion second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call on this.
Counselor Safavi?
Yes.
Counselor Wheel?
Yes.
Counselor Brown?
Yes.
Counselor Gallagher?
Yes.
Counselor Sheldon?
Yes.
Next up is Council Bill 9, Series 2022, amending Article 3 of Chapter 2 of the Municipal Code. This is a second and final reading. Director Sager again.
I'm not on, sorry. As the mayor stated, Council Bill 9, Series 2022 is also before you on second and final reading. There were no changes to the Council Bill from the first reading. As was discussed at the last City Council meeting, the requirement of a fidelity bond for any officer or employee that handles city funds is part of the city's charter. However, City Council can set the bond at any amount. As part of the current course of business, the city purchases additional excess crime coverage on an annual basis in the amount of $500,000. This coverage is higher than the required fidelity bond limit and would cover all city staff, not just the staff for which the bond was purchased. It is staff's recommendation that City Council set the fidelity bond amount to zero and authorize the purchase of additional excess crime coverage insurance. Staff is happy to answer any questions Council may have.
Any questions for Jessica?
No question.
Jessica, we have how large is the primary employee dishonesty bond for the city?
The city's primary insurance, $5 million.
So this would be, you leave that in place, set the limit at zero, and buy the excess.
Correct.
That's the recommendation.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Brown.
I move to approve Council Bill,
Yeah, I think
any other questions?
Any other questions?
Yeah, no.
I had some. Councilor Whale.
yeah, okay.
And then I think, did we talk about also amending we talked about amending the charter, because this is a charter requirement of the bond, isn't it?
Correct.
That's an issue, I think, is out there. True. City Attorney?
Oh, no, I don't have any, I'm just being prepared.
I think there was an agreement generally from council last time, as I recall, that we ought to go to, this is a perfect kind of a charter amendment because it doesn't make sense anymore. So anyway, okay, entertain a motion.
I move to approve Council Bill 9, Series 2022, a bill for an ordinance of the City of Cherry Hills Village amending Article 3 of Chapter 2 of the City of Cherry Hills Village Municipal Code concerning the fidelity bond requirement for employees that handle city funds on second and final reading.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, I'll take a roll call.
Counselor Safavi?
Yes.
Counselor Wheel?
Yes.
Counselor Brown?
Yes.
Counselor Gallagher?
Yes.
Counselor Sheldon?
Yes.
Final item on unfinished business, 8D, continuation of amendment number 1 and 6.2 from Council Bill 2, Series 2022. And this is Senior Planner Workman. You have the floor.
No formal presentation tonight, Mayor, for this particular item. If council will recall, earlier this year, you heard a series of housekeeping amendments. 2 of those amendments were continued to this date in order to give staff some additional time to work with some members of the community to bring some further revised language forward to you related to essentially horses and livestock and things of that nature. And we've made a lot of really good progress so far, and we're still in the works. So we're asking that this be further continued, I believe, until July 19th of this year in order to give us time to finish those efforts.
Any comments for, well, actually, that doesn't require anything from us, does it? Or what? Not necessarily.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Laura, but we will need a vote to formally continue it to July 19th.
There's a motion in the packet since
Okay.
the original motion was to continue it until today's date.
Okay. I move to continue amendment number 1 and 6.2 of Council Bill 2, Series 2022 until the July 19th, 2022 meeting date.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 That passes as well. New business, actually, we will recess the meeting of, the regular meeting of Cherry Hills Village City Council. At this time, it is, I have 7:51, and call to order the meeting of the Cherry Hills Village Southmoor Circle and Hudson Parkway General Improvement District Board. Roll call of members, Laura, please.
Board Member Safavi?
Here.
Board Member Wheel?
Happy to be here.
Board Member Brown?
Here?
Chair Stewart?
Here.
Board Member Gallagher?
Here.
Board Member Sheldon?
Here.
And Board Member Blum is absent.
And we have a consent agenda, approval of minutes. Councilor Sheldon, I think you are not there either. I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes indicating that Councilor Sheldon would.
You can just abstain. Okay, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Councilor Sheldon not voting. Next, unfinished business. This is Board Bill 1, Series 2022, providing for the issuance of a general obligation note to finance the cost of certain improvements. Approved at a district election held on November 2nd, 2021. Director Sager, you have the floor.
Before you tonight again on second and final reading is Board Bill 1, Series 2022. This bill authorizes the issuance of a general obligation note not to exceed $150,000, as well as additional proceeds generated from supplemental interest on the Series 2022 note in the amount of $32,061. If approved tonight, the loan will close on May 10th, and the work will begin towards the end of May. Staff is available to answer any questions council may have at this time.
Any questions for Jessica? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve Board Bill 1, Series 2022 on first reading. A bill for an ordinance.
This is second and final reading.
We missed that.
Sorry, on second and final reading. A bill for an ordinance of the Cherry Hills Village, Southmoor Circle, and Hudson Parkway General Improvement District in the city of Cherry Hills Village, Colorado, providing for the issuance of a general obligation note of such district, Series 2022, in an aggregate principal amount not exceeding $150,000 to finance the cost of certain improvements approved at a district election held November 2nd, 2021, ratifying actions heretofore taken, authorizing the execution by the district of the note and related documents required in connection therewith, and making determinations as to other matters related to the note on second and final reading.
Second.
A motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing no discussion, roll call, Laura, please.
Board Member Safavi?
Yes.
Board Member Wheel?
Yes.
Board Member Brown?
Yes?
Chair Stewart?
Yes.
Board Member Gallagher?
Yes.
Board Member Sheldon?
Yes.
And that concluding our business for the district. It is 7:54. We will adjourn the meeting of the board and reconvene the meeting of Cherry Hills Village City Council and proceed to reports. I have some brief ones for everyone. On April 6th, Metro Mayor's Caucus met. It was interesting. Mark Falcone and Carl Coble spoke to the Metro Mayor's Caucus and talked about affordable housing and talking about legislation to using municipal finance bonds and tax-free bonds for use for private construction of multi-housing projects, probably rentals, probably not owners, probably not condos, but that appears to be having full support of a lot of folks. I'm not sure if it's going to get through legislation this year or next, but I think using the municipal bond authority and taxing authority by an entity has a lot of promise of decreasing capital costs and making it available. They did say something that was very concerning. I mean, you heard about how many units were down, which is like 100 or 150,000 in the Denver metro area. Shocking. And what they're looking at is trying to get, affordable housing for those who are making 60 to 120% of the median income. And that's the sweet spot and what they're looking at. And Mark Falcone is a smart guy, I have to say. April 7th annual, we had our building code meeting here. I think the city manager may talk about that. Councilor Gallagher was there for part of that too. I thought that I sat through that. I thought that went very well, very interesting. On the 8th, we had the meeting of Arapahoe County Commissioners, mayors, city managers in Inglewood. Most of the discussion there was on the Arapahoe County formation of the Arapahoe County Health Department. Big lift for the Arapahoe County about getting together and getting the structure in place so they can hire people quickly, and how you retain people when you don't even have a health department yet, and so keeping people aboard when it's in a difficult environment. They have a lot of challenges, and the health department that we will have on January 1st, 2023 will not have the same services as Tri-County Health. It will be a slimmed down version, and it won't have all the bells and whistles. It's going to be a long time before Arapahoe ever gets back up to what Tri-County Health could offer. So,
Mr. Mayor, just to add on to that, they did indicate they'd be willing to come and give an update to this body at a time when they probably have a few more answers than they have right now. So stay tuned. We will make sure that you are kept up to speed once they have a little bit better info.
And I think
still just crawling at this.
And I've invited them to come as soon as they're ready to come, because it affects all of our residents. I mean, these are really our services that everybody uses, and it's going to be a big change. We had on April 12th, we had 2 CML meetings. I'm on the Budget and Audit Committee. We approved the fees for 2023. Those won't change. They'll basically be the same. We're looking at changing over the entire kind of structure, though, of the fees. It's very complicated now about how there's a cap on how much they can increase for each city, and that's caused a whole lot of cities to be out of compliance and others to be. And so we're looking at making that, redoing it and making it all reasonable and kind of issue, and that there'll be more to come on that. The mayor, I hosted the Mayor's Munch. Cherry Hills Village did with mayors of Greenville Village, Centennial, Littleton, Sheridan, Inglewood at Pino's. They're all doing well. The 2 new mayors at Littleton and Sheridan are great guys. They're young guys, and they're really involved, and I think they're well represented in those cities now. We had the first meeting of the Canal Collaborative Forum. I think Councilor Sheldon will probably report on that. We have a Hampton Avenue study call. I don't know if you're on that. About that, you'll be on that as well. I'll be on that. Dr. Cog meeting also on the 20th, which Councilor Will will be at. We have an Arapahoe County CDOT meeting on the 21st, a Zoom call with the executive committee. I'll be on that. And I guess city manager too? No? All right. The 22nd, CML executive board meeting. We have some, CML will be deciding positions on some of the late legislation that's been coming through. The bad, distressing news, we did lose on the CML, lost its appeal to the governor to veto the sales tax exemption for public schools that was passed through the legislature. So our concern with that was that once the legislator starts making exemptions for, you can't tax, this is exempt, this tax is exempt, and this tax, they're going to be coming at cities all over the place. And there's no there's no ending point about what they can exempt and say that, we want to exempt this because we like it, so we exempt that from city tax. So it set a bad precedent, and the governor signed it over our objections. There will be litigation, probably spearheaded by CML and others, because we think it's unconstitutional what they're trying to do. It violates the home rule provisions of the Colorado Constitution. There'll be I'm going to an OSTAB meeting, the Open Space Trail Advisory Board, on the 25th. Also, I wanted to say, I wanted to comment too about the fencing. The thing of the fencing came up. My personal view, I think anytime the fencing is, we determine that the fencing is non-compliant, and in our area, we ought to say something and write letters. Clearly, the law of eminent, we can't, there's no right of possession, adverse possession doesn't run against the city, so we're not going to lose our rights, but having those it's just bad form to have those fences in our right-of-ways when they shouldn't be there. And if nothing more, we need a letter in our file saying, get that fence out. We recognize that fence is in the wrong place. Certainly, I kind of get it, not having to go to every place because it's probably happening all over, but certainly when it rises to the level that we know it's there, we ought to be writing a letter and saying, that fence needs to come out. That's on our property. And I know Greenwood Village does. I've had personal experience with that because I used to live in Greenwood Village, and I know they did that. And we had dispute about a fence, but they're much more active about going out and saying, your fence is in our right-of-way. So, our fence on our property was 50 or 60 years old. And it was a legitimate dispute. They were wrong, we were right. But, they still wrote a letter, and it was good because they raised the issue, and then we go back and say, no, you're wrong, this fence is actually in the right place. So it's good for both sides to kind of understand what it is. People really, once a fence is up for 50 or 60 years, everybody starts to think that's my property, right? Yeah. So anyway, that's just my thought. Finally, most important thing, this is Ashton Safavi's birthday, so happy birthday, Ashton. Better.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple things. Last Wednesday, I went and took a tour of the Highline Canal Conservancy's new offices. If you haven't been there, it's really neat. They really did a nice job converting an old maintenance facility down at Orchard and where the canal crosses. So that was neat to see. And then the next day, on Thursday, Russell and Emily Black and I attended the Highline Canal Collaborative's first meeting. And that had staff level and management level and electeds all present, and talking about the roles of those folks moving forward. And then we got good updates from the Canal Conservancy folks, Harriet Lemaire, and then also from Denver Water on their efforts on fundraising, their efforts on stormwater management throughout the canal, their efforts on what's going to be coming to us soon about turning over maintenance of the canal to each of the jurisdictions that own their certain respective parts. They're excited to hear the results of our engineering report we've engaged Icon Engineering to do for stormwater. And if it proves up that we might be a good candidate and it's viable to participate in a stormwater management plan using the canal, they're excited to have us jump on board with that and somehow dip our toe in and work on that. Along with taking ownership of our respective section of the canal, not ownership, but maintenance. I floated an idea. I think Harriet during the meeting mentioned something about cooperation with other jurisdictions or something, and I asked in front of everybody, asked if it would be reasonable to maybe do an IGA with, say, an adjacent jurisdiction, municipality like Greenwood Village, for instance. There might be some economies of scale for our little village to share in our maintenance obligations of the canal. So for us to be able to go get tree trimming done and to do our section of grading or regrading or putting in top lifts of crusher fines or whatever it may be, doing those things as our 3 mile stretch or doing it with us and the adjacent 3 mile stretch, we might get some more economies of scale, number one. Number two, I don't know if we have, especially as it relates to tree trimming, I certainly don't think we have in-house staff that's going to do a bunch of the big stuff. They may, I don't know if they sub that out. I want to float the idea amongst ourselves, and not to even for discussion right now, but just to be thinking about, we may want to get into a partnership in some way, shape, or form with our neighbors on some of this maintenance stuff. And Jay, if you want to chime in, or if anyone else does, I'm not trying to muzzle you. I just didn't want to necessarily have to talk about it.
I just want to say that process is already moving forward. Greenwood, Littleton, and Denver have signed on to an IGA. So we are watching that closely because you're 100% right, those economy of scales. And we hope to be able to jump onto that once we're ready to make that leap to being in charge of all that maintenance. And the good thing is they're continuing to work those kinks out. The first couple of years, they figured there were some things that they thought were in the contract that weren't. So they're helping work all those kinks out. So when we jump on, it should be a little cleaner. And I agree, it's a great idea to just get one company doing trees and one company doing trash pickup and those type of things throughout the entire system. So we'll keep an eye on that.
Good.
For sure.
All right, great, thank you. A couple other updates. May 16th is the Highline Canal, the Dine on the Canal dinner. So, I'm sorry, September 16th.
September,
Did I say May?
September. Yeah.
No, September 16th at the canal's new headquarters down there on Orchard. So should be a neat new venue for that dinner. Mark your calendars for that. May 20th coming up is Goat Yoga for those who got their Quincy Farm electronic mailer today. I think my wife Katie and I are going to sign up and let goats stomp on her back for a while on May 20th. Jay, I'd love when you get around to reports, I'd love to get an undergrounding report on what's going on with the poles that are left. And then the final thing, don't know how practical it is because it might be a nightmare with people writing on their packets and having to recycle stuff. But Laura, I feel awful throwing away, an inch of paper every night on stuff that we are continuing. We're continuing the 3 Crest Road, and we're continuing the rewrite of the code amendments 1 and 6.2. And so to toss this stuff and just have you reprint it, I think is kind of a shame. So we may want to have you look into, if the council is okay with it, figuring out a way where I could hand you back this stuff and you just put it back into my packet next time and maybe slip page in whatever's necessary for an update based on what happened tonight. Otherwise, I just think it's a shame to throw all this paper away. That's all.
Councilor Gallagher.
A quick shout out to Quincy Farm, who the group is the Cherry Hills Land Preserve and Quincy Farm coming up with a robust, to Dan's point, including goat yoga. There's going to be the same evening. There's a goat walk around where you bring your kids, grandkids for goat friendly.
Which kids? Your real kids
Yeah.
or your kids?
There'll be burning, bee activities, all sorts of things. So it's a robust schedule. They'll be providing their program on, or I guess it's, what's the word? On July 1st, their plan for the upcoming year. So,
Yeah, they're programming in master plan.
yeah. So it's great to see it activated. We'll get people on site and good, strong move forward. That's it.
Councilor Prow.
So I have 2 comments that kind of go back to our discussion that weren't really relevant to the application. But the first is to second the mayor's point about the fence in the right-of-way. We do have a complaint-driven system, and we have received complaints. So now is the time to act. It is not fair to people who go to build fences and get told, no, you can't build your fence there, and yet this person has, literally hundreds of feet of public property in their yard. So I think that we do need to take, I'm not necessarily suggesting that we have to go out patrolling and start, because I don't think we have the resources to do that. But when we receive complaints, I think we need to take action on that. And then the second is, I really think we should reconsider our first reading, second reading process. I understand that, we used to have debates over these issues twice, but really what happened here tonight, in my opinion, is a travesty that we basically just wasted 2 weeks of everyone's time to discuss this application and discover these problems. And now, it's pushed out even farther. I feel terrible for the applicant and everyone involved. And these types of things they're not uncommon. It is not uncommon for council to look at applications and have their own questions that used to be addressed between first and second reading. And we have removed that, and now basically first reading serves no purpose except to delay the timeline. So I know there were reasons that we made that move in the first place, and those reasons still exist, but I really would like us to reconsider how we do that.
Councilor Wheel.
Thanks. Just a couple of topics. The Bellevue median business, I think you're all familiar. The original estimates were around $100,000, and the HOA was in for half. We had the other half in our budget. The bid process was executed, and the bids came back. The low bid was $183,000. We don't have extra money in our budget, nor does the HOA. And my recommendation to them was to, obviously it's their decision, their choice, but I think people are not hungry in the construction world right now, and prices are very high, and maybe waiting is just a lot better value. We may get a better value down the road. So and they took that advice and sent notes out to their board members that was delayed. Dr. Cog, I'm on the Regional Transportation Committee of Dr. Cog, and we had our meeting this morning. The big celebration, our carbon monoxide restrictions have been, we've applied to lift them. It's like a 20-plus year process to get out from underneath that, but back in the 70s, they showed pictures of the sort of brown haze that masqueraded as air. And, there's been great progress, and the air is obviously much cleaner. A lot of that attributable really to regulation on the automotive industry and the turnover of the fleet, the rolling stock. But even so, it's an opportunity to celebrate. Carbon monoxide, toxic, but not a greenhouse gas. The greenhouse gas regulations, or rules rather, are being debated as we speak, and that's going to be a much, much heavier lift to make progress on those. And we are, just an FYI, we're going back to, we've been Zoom this whole time, committees and Dr. Cog board and all of that, but we're going back to live meetings 2 months to a month, 2 weeks to a month down the road, depending upon, which meeting it is. And I certainly echo Katie's comments and Dan's comments, and I am not comfortable with this whole place we're at on the fences and all of that. And I know I've gotten complaints about people putting boulders on median just to prevent folks from parking on what they perceive to be their lawn, which is really public property, and so on and so forth. So I would like to broaden the issue from just our particular challenge with this, or not the particular problem in front of us with respect to Crest Road, but really take it up as a more encompassing issue. And as well, I mean, if we're writing letters, we should also be talking about the remedial action that goes, that may be if the fence falls down, you cannot replace it where it is or whatever, but I think we need to start to make some progress in this area rather than having it just kind of deteriorate over time, whatever folks can get away with, and, well, they sold the house, so it doesn't count, and all of that. That's all I have. Thanks.
Councilor Sfami.
No report other than just a congratulations to Dr. Todd Solomon for being the 24th president, was voted last week of CU system. So that's a pretty good news for the CU system. That's all.
And just to follow up on Councilor Wheel, we still are out of compliance with ozone. We're in compliance with carbon monoxide, but ozone's a big deal. And, it may be how we're going to solve that. And there's discussion of RTD-free days during high ozone days, which is one put out there by the governor. But ozone's a bigger problem than carbon monoxide now because there are a lot of natural sources for ozone as well, and so it's tackling it is going to be really difficult. Ultimately, electric cars may be the way that everything is solved, but how fast they can move on ozone is the thing the Metro Mayor's Caucus is looking at right now.
I'll let the directors provide any updates they have first before I go. Pat, do you have any?
Just a few quick ones. As the mayor mentioned, we did have our contractor meeting a few weeks ago. We've gotten some really positive feedback about that. Folks really appreciated the opportunity to have more of an interactive session with us and ask questions and that kind of stuff. And so we've had really good feedback on that. If you haven't seen through the social media posts, last week Planning and Zoning Commission decided to extend the deadline for filling out the second survey until the end of the month. We are right around 100 responses right now, which is really great since it's mostly online. And there's nothing in there that's shocking. There's some things that caught my attention just as interesting, but nothing that was revolutionary. And then finally, Mr. Mayor, you may be aware of this, but we received some correspondence today, actually, from CML. There's a House Bill 22-1362, that would mandate municipalities adopt and enforce minimum energy codes without exception or consideration of local priorities. CML is asking folks to contact their representatives and politely ask them to not support that. There's a variety of issues with it, the least of which is home rule and the ability to implement what is necessary for us. So that do keep that in mind as you keep an eye on the legislative session.
And if you would like us to write a letter on behalf of City Council as a whole and send that to our representatives, we will be more than happy.
I think we should. Is there a form letter from CML too? That's an issue that, historically building codes are issues of local, they're ours. And when the state's stepping in and saying, you must comply with this energy building code, which the terms of which we haven't even figured out yet, you must comply with it and say you comply with it now is, not respective of home rule municipalities. So CML will oppose it.
Before we send a letter on behalf of council, can somebody dig up some nonpartisan summary of the bill, proposed bill, and send it to us?
We can do that.
You bet.
Yeah.
Actually, we can give you CML's version of the bill.
Yeah, we'll get it for you.
We have invited on May 17th, Liz Gardner, who is our new representative with XL as the government liaison. I hope you all have some very pointed questions for her on undergrounding and the process. Councilor Sheldon.
She's coming to council?
Yes.
She is.
We have asked her to come talk to you guys. Introduce herself.
I would ask, just to tack onto that, that was, I think our primary purpose for doing that is to give council an opportunity to see what's going on, not just hearing it from us, but to see the people who are actually responsible for it and hear from them directly. With that said, Mr. Mayor, I know that some of the potential legislation that had been floating out there about undergrounding and Excel is near and dear to your heart. I would kindly request that this is more locally oriented towards just our project.
Well, this is above her pay grade.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah, okay, just making sure.
And so,
But
Councilor.
she can come and talk about Quincy.
That's what we're hoping.
That's what we want.
Yeah.
So,
that's what
Councilor Sheldon, believe it or not, XL said They were done. I know they do, and they're not, So, we have had some heated conversations with XL, myself. We've been on site 3 or 4 times now. They understand that this is not acceptable. The time frame's not acceptable. The communication has not been acceptable. This has been the worst project I've ever been involved with in my 30 years in public service. And I have told XL that, and we'll see. Hopefully, we met out there again today with XL to coordinate with Comcast and CenturyLink. The project's been going for almost 2 years now. XL has been out there every day, did not communicate with staff that we missed that Zayo has lines on those poles. They could have told us that 2 years ago, so we would have had that coordinated. We contacted Crown Castle, we contacted CenturyLink, Comcast, all of them, and we get a call that, we're ready for you guys to come walk this with us, we're done. And there's half a dozen poles that are half cut down, wire sticking out of the ground. So Ryan and I have taken that on as our top priority, and we hope to see those poles gone. The poles, and I made XL pledge that they would come back and take the poles out, because normally once they're off, they give that to the other utilities. I've told them that's not acceptable, and they have said that they will be back when the other utilities are done. So we're meeting with Zayo. We've given them formal notice as per required by our license agreement. So they have 90 days to get those lines off of those poles. And CenturyLink and Comcast should be out there in the next couple weeks getting all that spaghetti off the ground and burying all the lines. So we're trying.
Okay, well, that's good. Thanks for that update. The revegetation, what's the plan for re-veg of that right away?
We were hoping it would be done by now so we could get some rain. XL is responsible for that. So we told them, what's that?
Are they going to wait until those last half dozen poles are out?
Yeah, we told them to wait until the whole thing's done, because it's just going to get torn up again. So they have to regrade it. We will inspect their grading before we allowed them to put topsoil down. Then we'll inspect that, and then we will let them hydro-seed it.
So hopefully we get that done in the fall before snow starts flying, re-vegged.
Yeah, we don't want to do it in the heat of the summer, but we've got to put something down to stop the mud once they put the topsoil down.
Thanks, Jay.
No report.
I have, unfortunately, quite a few things. None of them are very long. First of all, just a quick update for council regarding the police chief search. We had our full day of interviews. It went very well, multiple panels. There were some things that came out through that process, though, that really required a lot of follow-up. We're in the middle of going through that follow-up. I'm hoping to have some resolution, maybe even by the end of this week, but if not next week, so that we can hopefully select a finalist for the last steps that need to be gone through. So stay tuned. I'm feeling very positive about that process. We are also going through the finance director search process. I would like to say I'm also feeling as positive about that one. I am not. So correct, that we did need to repost that position. It is now open until filled. After going through a few different finalists, we still have no replacement. Well, we could never replace Jessica to begin with, but we don't have a person in that potential seat yet. So stay tuned. The finance director is one of my top priorities at this point. And it's stressful at this point. The retention or the recruitment and the retention stuff that you read about in the press and hear about from your colleagues, and everybody says, oh, it's real. Guess what? It is real. It is very real. So I'm going to probably I have some ideas about some things that these two processes have highlighted about our situation here. It's premature to bring those up, given the fact that we haven't filled either one technically. So, but I will likely be floating some ideas with City Council about some things we can do and some analysis that we can do about our processes and our systems to see what we can do to make sure that we are staying competitive. For the finance director? No, we do not. I think we're open to that. We, Catherine, our HR person, reached out and did a bunch of additional research about knowing that we have to go back out to the market, and we have changed some things, enhanced some things, changed the posting. The remote work question is real. That's just going to be a reality for forever. So we did some follow up on that and how we're going to handle that. So since we just posted it a few days ago, we've actually already gotten a few hits. Catherine's out anyway, so we couldn't really initiate that contract. So I think what we're going to do is by the time she gets back, if we're still dragging our feet, we will probably look at that.
Would you need to get some supplemental authorization from us for money to do that? Or do you
Yes, we would.
Maybe you want to go ahead and do that just as having it in your back pocket in case you need to do it, put it on the agenda.
Yeah, we could probably do that. Yeah, that's a good idea. As was mentioned tonight by former Mayor Laura Christman and emails that you received, we did receive an initial, not a final notice, but an initial notice about a charter amendment. I know after having some conversations with some council members, there is some interest in at least having just a quick conversation, if you will, with the committee. And so I think what I've been hearing is that there's a desire to maybe have a couple of council people partner with Kathy and I to see if we could reach out to them in short order. Like, I think they're ready to go. So just to see if we could have a conversation with them before they formally submitted. So maybe even sometime this week. So if council thinks that's a good idea, I would love a couple of volunteers if at all possible.
I'd be happy to participate.
I think that could work.
Okay.
That could work.
Sounds good.
I'll volunteer.
We will, Laura and I will work with Mike and Randy and the committee to see if we can get setting up. Again, I want to do this as politely and graciously as possible in an effort to just have a dialogue about it. And I want to be respectful of their desire and their requirements that they have from a timeline perspective. So I guess I want to, out of respect for them, I want to do this as quickly as we possibly can.
I would make one request. Certainly, Chris, you and I can chat, but other council members, if you have some thoughts about the proposition, please drop an email. Let me know, because I don't want to just go out there by myself with my own opinions. I'd feel better if I had yours as well.
And I know there's some legal questions that have been thrown around. If you do have questions that you don't understand about the language that's in there, please reach out to Kathy. Do not hesitate on that. So, the Land Preserve is, as Mike mentioned, they are doing a lot more, and we have received a lot of their programming. They are starting the process. We've been meeting with them monthly. They are just starting the process of formulating their annual plan. They are going to come and give an update, not really about the annual plan, but about everything else that they've been doing. They are coming to council, is it the 3rd? May 3rd. And so be prepared for a brief update from them about everything they're up to. I think it'd be great. Overall, I think the overall reception has been very good, and I just want to make sure they had an opportunity to keep you informed directly so that you have a chance if you have any questions or whatever you might have. A couple of other smaller things, just real quick, and this is a tiny clarification, but I do think it warrants clarifying with so that everybody can hear it. The first reading and the second reading. So if we wanted to do that, the changes that we made recently actually put more of those public hearings in the first reading. So it actually went to the direction you're referring to. This is specifically laid out in a separate section for the process, and it actually says the public hearing is on the second reading. So we didn't cover right-of-way vacations, and if we wanted to change it, we could, but
Maybe what I'm referring to is not necessarily the public hearing part, but the fact that we don't discuss it at all.
oh, okay.
The first
Yeah,
time.
sure.
Yeah, you can always discuss
And
it
that,
on your agenda.
I think, you know, what, I remember having a discussion that saying, you know, we're discussing it twice, basically, because we would discuss it at the first reading, and then we'd have the public hearing, and we'd discuss it again.
Yeah, in my recollection, it wasn't so much our discussion of it, which I think everybody is free to do. It's making the applicant come twice. I mean, having him come at once in the first hearing, and then having him come again in the second hearing. We just said that doesn't make any sense. And we also then get the ability for the testimony, which is a public hearing, to be inconsistent and conflicting, rather than just on a record of at one final second hearing when you have one record to say this is it. So that's the yeah.
Kathy and I are going to continue to talk about this issue. I mean, I'm just getting way out ahead of here, but my personal preference is really for the public hearing to be on the first reading. My job is to make sure that you are informed. And I would rather have you hear from the public earlier in the process, especially before you start forming your ideas. There are other considerations with that, though. It's not as simple as what I just laid it out to be. So let us talk about it further and maybe report back to you.
And in defense of that, it's not as though this was the first time we'd ever seen that.
Understood.
So, you know, my bad, and perhaps mea culpa on all of us for not noticing that until tonight for whatever reason.
I just wanted to circle back on that specific one, though, about the sort of the two hearings, or the two readings, I mean.
Right.
Finally, we did send the letter for the House Bill 1024 that the mayor mentioned. We did send that to the governor to.
Oh, this was the sales tax exemption.
Yeah, the sales tax. Yeah, we request that to.
We asked the
him to
governor
veto that.
to veto it, and he politely declined to veto and sign.
I think he just declined. We didn't. It really wasn't polite or impolite. He just did it. But with that said, we will, similarly to that, though, we will start working on some language that we can send to CML or to our representatives. So that's the final report I had.
I do have an update, and this pertains to the opioid MOU that you guys signed off on late last fall. So I have been, and Laura and Chris, we've all been involved at various points in working with Arapahoe County. So the MOU that everyone joined set up a process by which there are 19 regional councils and that will determine how the money is used on a local basis. And the Arapahoe County is its own region. And so that they're trying to figure out how that regional council is going to work. The MOU contained as an exhibit a sample IGA, but the members in this region have the option to modify that. So that has been the most recent discussion. And so there's going to be a determination of how the regional funds shall be expended and monitor that the funds are used appropriately per a 2-year plan that the regional council prepares and submits to the state opioid abatement council before regional funds are allocated. So right now, the proposition is that the regional council for Arapahoe County will include the following voting members: 2 representatives appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, the director of some version of the county's health department, director of the county's human service department, a representative appointed by the sheriff from the sheriff's office, representative from the county court system or DA's office within the region, and 4 representatives appointed by the cities within the county, which can be council members and mayors, with the following having an appointment: Aurora, which really stood strong for having their own seat at the table for maybe reasons that don't need to be stated, Centennial, and then a division between western cities and eastern cities in the county, to sort of, which will kind of rotate, and then a representative from municipal law enforcement appointed by the cities. So, but all cities would have a seat at the table to participate in discussions. Those are just the voting members. And there's going to be some additional RFPs about consulting with folks, prior to this council convening. But the next step you're going to see is an intergovernmental agreement. So the county's in the process of drafting that right now. Per our discussions, they'll send it out for a review, and then you'll see it probably in May or June.
Do we know how much money's coming to Arapahoe County?
I don't know that number. Colorado, I think, is getting approximately 385 million when everything gets finalized, but I don't have the breakdown on that. And just so you know, that IGA will be, we can terminate it immediately with cause or with 30 days prior written notice without cause. And it's not creating a separate entity, it's just a cooperative agreement. So
But we're going to sign that too when it comes.
Pardon me?
Is that IGA, and we're parties to the IGA as well?
You will be. I mean,
And we'll be asked to sign
you're
it.
being asked to sign to be part of that IGA. It largely will track what the suggested model was by the AG and that MO that you exhibit, but there'll be some variations in who sits on the board for the most part. At least that's my understanding as of today.
And at that time, we might ask you, I think the initial indications are, from what I heard, they may ask cities who wants to be one of those two representatives. And so you might just want to think about whether or not you want to sort of put your name in the hat for the first go around. Because they'll rotate around. Everybody will get his shot, but do you want to go first?
I think, frankly, there are other, we didn't spend any of that kind of money. Sheridan and Littleton, they may be better suited to be sitting on that than we are, so, frankly. All right. Motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Oh, boy. Without hearing no objection, we're adjourned.